Welcome to Game Fondue Reviews. In this video, we're going to take a look at Jamaica. In Jamaica, players are playing as pirates, essentially trying to race around the island of Jamaica and collect doubloons along the way. Let's jump right in with a description of the rules, see a few example turns being played, then I'll be back for some closing remarks.
This is Jamaica set for a 3-player game. The first thing you have to do is shuffle up the treasure cards and deal out 9 here. There's actually 12, but 3 of them are going to be removed from the game. Next, each player picks a color and takes the ship in that color and puts it on Port Royal, which is the start space here, along with the corresponding deck of cards. And they're just going to shuffle them up, put them in front of them, and they're going to draw a hand of 3 cards. Next, each player is going to put 3 doubloons and 3 food in separate holds of their ship. And you're just going to lay out the treasure tokens in the spaces with the rocks that look like pirate skulls. Next, you just form a pool of the remaining resources, which include doubloons, food, and gunpowder. Then you're going to pick a start player. They get this token here along with it. They're going to get the 2 action dice. And from there, you're ready to start the game. The game is played in rounds composed of 4 phases, which are roll dice, choose cards, take actions, and the end of the round phase. The game ends at the end of a round when 1 or more players have reached Port Royal going all the way around the board once. You can go backwards in your first move, but the game doesn't end immediately when you pass Port Royal in that case. You have to get all the way around the board once. So during the dice roll phase, all that happens is the start player takes the dice and rolls them, and they're going to put these 2 dice, after consulting the cards in their hand, on this and this space in any order they want. This is the morning side, and this is the evening side, and it's going to correspond with actions that players take during their turns. After the dice are laid out, players are all going to simultaneously choose an action card and just put it face down. And once everybody has done this, we're going to move on to the action phase, in which the start player is going to reveal their card and take actions. And then after the start player takes this action and then that action, the next player will go until everybody's had a turn. There's 2 types of actions. There's loading actions, which are essentially any non-arrow symbol. They're going to look like gunpowder, doubloons, and food. And you can see them here. Here's one with double gold. But when you take a loading action, you're going to load as much of that resource as indicated by the pips on the dice. So in this particular case, we would first have a move because it's the morning. So this would be the evening action. So after moving, we would do this. We would load 3 gunpowder into our hold. When loading, you have to load into an empty hold of your ship. So for instance, it could go there. It could not, however, go to a place where you already had food or gold or even a resource of the same type. So if you already had some gunpowder there and you were to do this to get 3 more, you can't put it on the same spot. If you ever have an entirely full ship and you have to load something, you have to discard a type of resource that is not the same as the one you're loading. So I can't discard these gunpowder to load in more gunpowder to that spot. I would have to get rid of the food or the gold. And you must do it. It's not an optional. No actions are optional in this game. You have to do them. So you got to load it in there. If there's ever a situation where all of your holds are full of the same resource, you just don't get to take the action though. The other type of action is movement, and there's 2 types of movement. There's green arrows and red arrows. Red arrows actually mean you move backwards, and green arrows means you move forwards. And you always move the number of pips indicated by that action. Again, the move would have had to have happened first here because the morning always comes before the evening. So first the person would move 5 spaces, then they would have loaded the 3 gunpowder in this example. But let's talk about moving, because when you move as many spaces as indicated. So let's move the red guy. He goes up here, and wherever you land, you have to pay a certain cost. Some of the places cost doubloons, in this case 3. Some of the places cost food, so you would essentially just pay those to the bank. However, if another player was to move forward, let's just pretend the yellow guy had moved, and red was already here. If you land on a space that somebody else occupies, you first have to have a battle. If you're the moving player, you are the attacker and you're going to go first. So the first thing you have to do is decide from your hole how many gunpowder you'd like to discard. So let's just pretend yellow had some. Let's say he wants to discard 2 gunpowder. Then he's going to roll the attack die, which is this one here, and he's going to get a value. That value plus the number of gunpowder discarded is his combat value. So in this case it would be 2 plus 2 is 4. And then the defender is going to do the same thing. After he gets to see the dice and what the other guy discarded, he can decide if he wants to discard any. So let's pretend red decides he wants to discard 3, then he rolls and he gets an 8. So that's 11. So obviously he would have been the winner and the gunpowder would be discarded. When you win a battle, you have 3 choices. You can steal one of the holds from another person. So for instance, you could just take all these food, put them in here. Or he could steal a treasure, which we didn't get to yet, but if this player had a treasure, he could steal it. Or you can even give the other player a treasure, because some of the treasures are actually worth negative points, so you may want to do that. But you have 3 options: take from a hold, take a treasure, or give a treasure whenever you win. It's also important to note that if either player rolled the star, they win immediately. So if the attacker, even though he discarded 2 gunpowder, rolled the star, the defender wouldn't even get to defend. Those 2 gunpowder would still be discarded, but they would immediately win in that case. So after a battle is resolved, you still have to pay the cost of a space. So it's possible that, let's say the red player had won this battle, took the gold from the yellow player. Now the yellow player can't afford to be here. So in this case, the yellow player has to move back until they reach the first spot that they can afford to pay. That could also trigger another battle if somebody's there. And in this case, they land on a space with a treasure token. You just discard it, and you get a treasure card from the deck. And if it's a treasure like this, or like this, which are essentially just chests, you're going to put them face down in front of you. Nobody gets to see them except you. But if it's one that looks different, like one of these two cards, it's going to be face up in front of you and give you a special ability. So that's how the treasures work. For a slightly more complicated and more complete movement example, let's pretend the black player started here and he ended up on this space. This costs 5 money. He only has 3, so first he has to pay the full amount he has. Then he has to proceed to move back until he reaches a space that he can afford to pay. In this case, this is a space that costs 1 food, so he had to pay that money and the food for this turn. If you're ever at one of these, you can choose which way you want to move back, so you'd probably go back to take the treasure here, because the treasure spaces never have a cost associated with them. After all players have completed their actions, the players are just going to discard the cards they used face up into their discard pile, and then everybody's going to draw 1 more card from their deck. If anybody ever has to draw a card and their deck is empty, they're going to reshuffle their discard pile to make a new deck. And then you're just going to pass the start player token 1 space to the left, and then another turn is going to start with this player being the start player. If at the end of the round 1 or more players reach Port Royal, the game is going to end and there's a final scoring. I also want to point out that even if you have movement left, like let's say this was a 5 here and this was the card played, you were here, 1, 2, 3, you stop additional movement and you don't even take your evening action in that particular case. You totally stop at Port Royal, and also if another player ends on Port Royal, there's no battle. There's one other battle thing I guess I should point out. If there's 2 players in a particular area, or more than 2 players, and you land there, you're only going to fight 1, but you get to pick which one you fight. So if there's a certain player that you'd like to take from, that's the one to pick. So when 1 or more players end the round at Port Royal, the game ends, and the players are going to have a final scoring where they get the number of points indicated on these spaces here. Port Royal is worth 15, the next space is only 10, and anybody who does not make it up to this point actually loses 5 points. Then you're just going to add the value of your doubloons. So doubloons are actually worth points in this game, so it's good to have them. And then you're going to add the value of your treasures. And remember, some treasures are negative, so that could actually be a subtraction. But where you are, plus doubloons, plus treasures, and that's your final score. Whoever has the most points is the winner. Let's get going with this example playthrough. Normally, players' cards would be for their eyes only, but they're face up here to make it a little bit easy to see. So first, the first start player, or the captain, is going to take the dice and roll them. He's going to assign them as he pleases. So he decides he'd like to assign the 1 to the morning and the 2 to the evening. So that's what he's going to do, and then everybody sees that, and they get to put cards face down to decide what they want to do. So this guy's going to put this face down, and this guy's going to go with this one. So he's going to put that face down. And lastly, Ann Bonnie is just going to do this. So first, the start player is going to reveal, and he has a gold. So first, his morning action is to take 1 gold. And note that even though these are the same action, they have to resolve completely independent. And that matters because they have to go into empty holds, or you have to discard a hold of a different material type. So then 2 gold there. So he's going to get 2, and then this card is just pushed face up in his discard pile. And then next, the black player is going to go, and he's going to move 1 space. And then this space has a cost of 2 food associated with it, so he's going to pay those 2 food to the bank. Then his second action, he gets 2 food. And again, must be in an empty hold. This card is discarded. And then over here, Ann Bonnie has 2 movements. So again, these have to resolve totally separately. So first, this one here, but that causes a combat. So before any cost is paid, we're going to have the combat. So Ann Bonnie decides how much gunpowder she wants to discard. Obviously, she has none. She's going to roll the attack dice. Wow, she got a star. The defender doesn't even get a chance to defend. He's just been knocked out. And then she decides she's going to take this hole full of food over here. She could have taken the food of 1 or this one of 2. Of course, she takes the 2. And then this particular space costs 2 food, so she's got to pay it. And then now she has her second movement action, because that was only the morning, and she's going to move 2 more spaces. She's going to pay 2 more food to the bank. So everybody's cards are discarded, everybody's taken their action, so everybody just draws 1 new card from their decks. And this is going to pass here, and we're going to do another turn just like that. We're going to jump ahead a little bit later in the game so you can see some more interesting situations. Welcome back. So near the end of the game, it's the red player's turn to be captain. He's already rolled the dice 1 and 5 and assigned them accordingly. So first, he's going to flip his over, and first he moves back 1. And that triggers a battle with the yellow player. He can decide how much gunpowder he wants to spend. He has a whole bunch, but he has to keep in mind that the yellow player has this treasure card which adds 2 to her die roll. So he decides he's going to spend a whole lot. He's going to spend 5 on this particular battle. So he spends 5 gunpowder and rolls the die. He got a star, so he instantly wins. Those 5 gunpowder are still lost, however. and he can steal something from this player. He's going to take this whole big lump of gold here, because gold is worth points at the end of the game. Then he's going to move 5 spaces. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now he's fighting the black player. He's going to spend his last 2 gunpowder on this battle, and he's going to roll the die. And he got an 8. So with the 2 gunpowder, that makes a 10. And the black player is just going to spend all of his gunpowder here, which is 4. And he's going to roll. And he got a star. So the gunpowder, again, doesn't matter. And he is victorious. Instead of stealing any of these things, though, he decides that he would like to steal this treasure card. And remember, to get a treasure card, you land on a space with one of these, you throw it off, and you draw a card. So he gets this, he adds it to his area secretly because it stays face down because it's treasure type. But that worked out well for him. So now next, the black player is going to go. He flips his over. So first he moves 1 space, which costs 7 gold, and he can pay from any of the holds as he pleases. Here's 5, and then here's 6, 7, so he pays that gold, and then he's going to move 5 more spaces. Now he's in Port Royal, so we know at the end of this turn the game is going to be over, because that's essentially the end condition, is at least 1 player in Port Royal at the end of a turn. So lastly, the yellow player is going to go get 1 gold, has to go in an empty hole, and then move 5 spaces. And he gets to challenge that red player 1 more time, rolling 2 extra on the attack die. So that's actually a 12. Now the red player in defense got a 6, so the red player is obviously defeated. The yellow player decides, because the game's over, to take this big group of gold, and they're going to replace these here. Following the normal rules, they can't replace gold because gold is the same type. So now we know the game is over because this player has reached the end, so we do the final scoring. First, it's the points for where you are. This guy is 15. Both of these players have 5. And then plus the gold, so red would have 2 more, so red would be 7. And red has no treasure, so red's final score is 7. Yellow has quite a bit, though. Plus 5 for treasure, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's a good haul. But this alone is 15 plus 2, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Plus this treasure is 24. But then actually minus 7 in treasures, which ends up being 17. And that's the game. The yellow player wins.
Jamaica's definitely a pretty game, from the board to the card art to the box itself, which I really enjoy. It looks sort of like a treasure chest. It's a really fun game to look at, and it's really well suited for families. It takes a pirate theme, and there's nothing offensive about the art or anything like that. The game, of course, as well, is well situated for families. There's a lot of randomness. It's very easy to play and teach, and it plays very quickly. Despite having to make a trip around Jamaica that sounds like it might be a long task, the game plays pretty comfortably in under an hour. In my opinion, it's definitely better with more people, with the full complement of 6. But it plays pretty much the same throughout in terms of the mechanics or anything. There's no changes there. It seems to have gotten a recent surge in popularity, I think because the Dice Tower has been talking about it so much, but it's nice because I think it seems to be more readily available and things like that, which is always a nice plus. Game is very smooth. You might have some people who take a long time to decide where to put the dice, and everybody kind of has to wait on them, but it's not a big deal, and it's a pretty quick game nonetheless. The one thing I'm not super keen on is that some of the treasures are negative, because sometimes you take a longer route, albeit a cheaper route, to get the treasures, and you get a negative one. But some people really like that, because then in a combat they can give somebody a negative treasure and they feel really good about that. But all in all, if you think you'd be interested in this game, it's pretty much as you see it there. That's Jamaica.